Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Chris Edmonds and Mark Babbitt. They are co-authors of a new book called Good Comes First: How Today's Leaders Create an Uncompromising Company Culture That Doesn't Suck. One of the most important things a leader must do is create and maintain the right culture in their organization. I'm excited to have them on the show to talk about this essential leadership topic. So, Chris and Mark, welcome to the program.
John, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Great to be here, John.
Yeah, I tell you what, I saw your material and in about 2 milliseconds, I said, yeah, I want to get these guys on the show. I think culture is such an important topic, and we really haven't talked about it yet on the show. So I'm really excited to dive in and have this discussion. So, but just to start off, how did you guys come together to create this book? I know it took over 3 years to put it together, but how did you meet? Why did you decide this was the book that had to be written?
Mark, let me take a swing at this and have you fill in my absent memory loss right there.
Good. Let's do that, and then I'll tell you why you're wrong. Go ahead.
Which you can smell the culture already between the two of us. What is really fun is Mark and I had connected on social. Gotta be 8-9 years ago. We both had books published in 2014, and we're both, I think, smart enough to not, wish anybody ill will in the publishing industry. It's just an interesting beast anyway, and it's like, cool, I'll promote yours. He promoted mine. It was really fun. But we met face to face at a culture conference in Chicago where Mark was speaking with his business partner, and just had this wonderful kind of slightly twisted sense of humor, amazingly aligned viewpoint of, we got to get leaders smarter about this and fast. And we had a great deal of learning over the past 3 years, but Mark will maybe speak to some of the fits and starts. This whole pandemic thing kind of threw a wonderful Klieg light on the corners of, boy, culture is really vitally important, especially today. Mark, how'd I do?
I can't say that you said anything wrong or that I wouldn't have. Well done.
Yeah, I think you're right. This has shown a light on culture as an issue, especially as we, it's one thing we talked about with some of the people. I do some teaching and on leadership, and one of the things is that we get in when we went remote, and a lot of people were joining in on Zoom. We got to look into people's houses for the first time, and having these Zoom meetings. We're like looking into their personal spaces, which we never did before, which was a whole different element of culture. Is their home chaotic? Is their home super neat? Is there, and so you have this whole nother element that you never even thought of before. Now you're kind of going into people's homes. So
that's really cool.
So let's just open up with this question. And why do company cultures mostly suck?
Mark,
well, there's a loaded question right off the bat. So it comes down to leadership, John. It's leaders for decades. The entire industrial age have been measured on one thing: results. And it didn't matter in the industrial age how we gained those results. Just leader, go get the job done. Make that third quarter report look good. Hit your numbers. And if you had to treat people disrespectfully along the way, then that was fine. That's part of your job. You're not there to be a good guy, a nice guy, and people are expendable. And now we're learning now more than ever. And I'd like to say we exited the industrial age about 10 years ago, but John, there are leaders who are just not letting go. They're just entrenched in how they've always led. And the pandemic comes along, and we give people all this freedom, not intentionally, not on purpose, not because we're trying to change our culture, but we didn't have any choice. Now people are working from home, and as you said, we get insight into their personal lives, and it isn't just, is their office clean or house clean? It was, are they comfortable in their own skin? Are they, do they panic when their kids or their dogs walk in the Zoom shot, right?
It could happen.
We really got to learn a lot about people, and now leaders are trying to take that back. And people are walking with their feet. They're voting with their feet. We have this great resignation, or the mass employee exodus, or whatever we're calling it now, where people are going, no, I'm not going back to poor leaders. I'm not going back to poor companies. I'm not going back to poor cultures. I'm going to go find something else. I've learned my lesson. I've got to reevaluate my priorities. I've had a chance to reflect, and I'm not going back to that old normal.
I love that. Yeah, that's so true.
Well, and if I can add, one of the pieces that we really emphasized early on in this writing process was generational influences, and how millennials have had to, over the past 20 years, behave like classic autocratic command and control. That's the only option to succeed leaders. And so they kind of got infected by this kind of lousy process. And now we're looking at Gen Ys and Gen Zs who are in 2030 are supposed to be 65, 66% of the workforce. And they're not going to put up with autocratic command and control. They're just not.
Right.
And on the tail of a lot of, as Mark put very eloquently, unintended freedoms that were offered. And it was, in some cases, those freedoms were, we have to lay you off, we don't have any business. And which brings in another interesting, rather panicky kind of viewpoint of life. And we're still not out of that yet. But I think one of the pieces that we really felt was key is cultures in general aren't very good. And the good ones are really, really rare. And they get interviewed by media now every week, right? The leaders of those companies that are seen as treating people civilly and respectfully and great engagement. So we want to have a whole million of those companies in the next 10 years. And that's kind of our goal.
Well, it's absolutely necessary. So I'm glad to hear that you're on this mission, because it's a similar mission that I'm on as well. And I think that you touched on it, is that it's, leadership's responsibility to build and maintain that culture. And when the leader fails, then typically you have that bad culture. And that's problematic, and it's not good. And that's why we have such a low engagement rate overall in organizations. So let's talk about this. You say, you call it a good comes first culture. So what does a good comes first culture look like?
Let me jump in, Mark. I want to suggest. I want to suggest that this idea of good comes first was not Mark's and mine. Actually, we had a wonderful guide who kind of said, that's what you're talking about. That is your book title, and that's your theme. And all of a sudden everything came clear. It's like the glasses get cleaned, right? and really what we're looking to create is a work environment where team members, associates, employees, the more frontline kind of driving the business players, are treated with respect and validation every day for their ideas, efforts, and contributions.
I like this.
Mark, what'd I miss?
Yeah, and I'll add, John, if you don't mind, I'll add that we say right up front that we have our idea of good, but each company, each organization, each nonprofit, each volunteer team needs to define their own version of good. We can't help, we couldn't go to Amazon and tell them that their culture sucks, because they don't believe that it sucks. It works for them. It's good for them. It doesn't work for 90% of the population, but it works for them. So we aren't in any way trying to define or impart our version of good. But as Chris said, we know all the research we've done for the book and in our own consulting practices, we know that when we convince leaders that expecting and measuring respect is just as important as results, now we're on our way to having a good comes first company.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So let's get back to the origin. I mentioned earlier that leaders are responsible for creating and maintaining the company culture. What is that role? What's the leader do? What does the leader have to do to build and maintain the culture?
Boy, that's the underlying foundation of every lousy culture and good culture is leaders modeling. And in too many cases, they don't realize the impact of less than positive, less than purposeful, which leads to less than productive work environments. And so what we realize is that leaders often, because they've never been asked to even pay attention to the health of the work culture. And even fewer have been asked to lead a charge to change it and sustain those changes. We're giving leaders an unfair task. They've never been taught how. They've never been shown how. Their bosses never did it. Their mentors never did it. Their business school professors maybe never did it. But at least in this moment, at this time, they're charged with creating a culture where people are treated respectfully. And there's some really cool benefits to that for all parties concerned. But we have to start with the leaders to have them understand that they can't delegate this to HR. They cannot delegate this to an office 3,000 miles away in any fashion. And literally one of the biggest pieces that Mark and I discovered together over the last 20 years of our businesses is if we don't help leaders learn how to hold people accountable, then none of this is going to stick.
Yeah.
And as Mark said, we're trying to help leaders see that results are really good, but respect is equally good, and you get some benefits between the two. What we have to do is to help leaders who tell us all the time, I wish our performance accountability was better. And it's like, the guy in the room that's in charge of this, or the gal in the room, is right here. Let's talk, right? So we've really formalized 5 key characteristics of leaders that hold others accountable very effectively. And the number one key is leaders have to model the desired culture. They have to be role models. And it's like, you're never off duty. We tell leaders all the time, you'll never be able to run a yellow light in this town again, because that's a modeling. That is a demonstration of, and you can say X and then behave this way. Well, then we don't believe what you say.
Right. Yeah. There's an authenticity problem at that point. There's a trust issue when you don't act like you say you're to your standards. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting. One of the things that you said was, that leaders model, the desired culture, right? We model that. And you mentioned that, you can't even run a red yellow light in this town without everybody know. Well, it's funny because on the submarine, on the boat, that's one of the things that we were a leader 24/7. We never had a weekend off, or we couldn't, let our hair down and relax. I was Mr. Rennie, Lieutenant Rennie for, 100 days straight. I didn't even know my first name after, but you were a leader 24/7, and you were in the arena for 24/7 with no break, And so I think that having that kind of experience made it easy for me coming into leading businesses, because it was like, my authentic personal self and my leadership self were the same. I didn't act one way at work and one way at home, right? I was the same person. And I bring my genuine, authentic self to work every day. And that's what I want my people to do, is bring their authentic self to work every day, right?
Yeah.
And all their quirks, right? I mean, we know that people are messy, right? But I want them to bring the messiness to work, right? I want them to bring their, their hangups and their challenges and their, but also because people are messy, but they're also amazing, right? If you can tap into them, they can do some just incredible things. So that's really good. I like the idea of leaders modeling the right behavior for the culture.
Well, and John, to add to that, the other piece that's vital is that senior leaders, particularly business owners, are in charge of practices and policies and rewards and incentives. And so one of the other pieces that's critical is that you, as a leader, you got to be open to feedback on what's working well, what's not working well. That's a hard thing to do, but that's the only way you're going to know whether or not there's trust issues or respect issues or validation issues. And I know leaders are listening to this going, I've got enough trouble managing the results, kind of game. And Mark and I firmly believe managing results is half your job. And if you're not doing anything on the respect side, you're going to have a culture that's going to be harder to live in and harder to function in and way harder to trust people in.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Mark, you were in the military as well. And I, one thing I learned in the military was that it's the mission and the people. There's a big and in the middle of that. And it is a lot of what you do and you write in this book. Does some of that come from your experiences in the past, or this idea of mission and people?
Well, it did, and from my perspective, it came from actually 2 places. What I felt when I was in the military was a disconnect between the mission that I believed wholeheartedly in. I say this all the time. The Tom Cruise character in Born on the 4th of July as a teenager, well, that was me. I mean, I went in the military because I was sure that was the right thing to do. And it was everybody's job to serve their country. And then I got in the military, and at least in my world at Travis Air Force Base, it was actually run by civilians. It wasn't what you experienced, John. It was civilian contractors ran the place. And well, wait a minute, what am I doing here? And I'll also tell you, as a guy who coached baseball for 35 years, if you want to learn how to lead, or maybe how not to lead, try coaching, 12, 14-year-olds and communicating with 14-year-old parents in a travel ball, club ball scenario where there's a lot of money being passed around. And boy, talk about the need to build an uncompromising culture. We had to treat the kids and the parents with respect. We had to be mentors, not just managers. We had to apply the rules to everyone equally. We couldn't tolerate undesirable, unproductive behaviors, because if you did, that was your culture. And we say this in the book. Right. Culture is built upon the behaviors that you reward, and it's destroyed by the behaviors the unproductive behaviors that you tolerate. Right out there in front of God and all the umpires to see if somebody's throwing their helmet or throwing their bat as they come back into the dugout, and you tolerate that as a manager and a mentor, you've lost your culture. So a lot of my views on this entire process were very much not in the corporate boardroom. It was in real life, real world. And we'd like to think that helps ground the process.
Yeah, no, that's super powerful. I think you just said something that's I've written about it. I think it's really important, is that when you allow behaviors that are contrary to your culture to continue and you don't address it, it is devastating to your culture, because the good people that are trying to do the right thing see that you allow this kind of behavior to continue and you don't address it. It is not good for your loyal, hardworking people that are dedicated to your company and to your culture. It's devastating. And that's really important that you mentioned that. That's a very important topic. Yeah.
The idea that those behaviors are really not that bad. Yeah. They actually, number one, people don't miss anything. Number two, they talk to each other. And then number three, they begin to say, this isn't consistent. And they literally back off and back away. And one of the most fascinating conversations that Mark and I have with senior leaders engaging on this is we tell them, as you begin to define what respect looks like, and you begin to say, we're actually going to hold people accountable for this. You're going to have some folks go, that'd be cool. Show me. Yeah. You're going to have another percentage that goes, oh, thank God, finally. Right. And we call them early adopters, but there's going to be a group that says, you are not paying me enough to be nice to these people. You never asked me to be nice to these people. I don't even like these people. Right. And literally we have to tell these leaders that you may have to set some of these folks free if they don't align, because otherwise it's never going to get traction. You're going to lose credibility for anything you announce from there forward.
Yeah, our actions reverberate, right? So, it's funny because one of the things I always talk about when I take over a new manufacturing plant, I've led 9 different manufacturing plants in my career. Wow. And when I come in there, one of the things I want to do is establish who I am as a person and what I care about. I don't implement the strategy on day one, but I tell you what I want the culture to be. So, like, for example, I always say, do one thing that gets everyone's attention. I always do one kind of crazy thing that says, whoa, this guy's different, right? So what I did at one plant, I pulled up to the parking lot on my first day, and I realized there was assigned parking for all the managers, and right in the front of the building where they could come in at their own spot and they could walk in. And so I walk in the building, I put my stuff in my office, and I asked who was going to be my secretary. I said, who's the maintenance manager? And they said, well, this guy over here. I said, would you mind go getting him? And so I took him, we went outside, and I said, see all these reserve painted, and it was like a concrete, parking places. They had the names on them. I said, get some paint and get the guys out here. I want all that painted over. No assigned parking places in my factory ever. And if you want a good spot, get here early. And that's all I said. And it was just the idea of this is the way we're going to run the business. No one's special. We're all in it together. This is, one culture. We have one mission and nobody's special. And it was interesting, just like that, like I did that one little thing and the word just gets out and spreads. It's the one thing that you do that you can do early on to say, this is what my culture, this is what it means to work for, this organization. We're going to no one gets any special treatment. So that's awesome. I think that's something that leaders can establish that culture early on by doing some things to say, this is not what we stand for. This is, like I said, behaviors that are unacceptable. This is unacceptable behavior. We're not going to have it in our business. So
that's awesome.
I love that, John. And I'll tell you that we have leaders all the time that when they don't model their defined values, when they don't stand up for what they've already helped define, or maybe they defined individually as good, and then they're not doing that. We had a leader tell us, oh, it was one example, that doesn't set precedent. Well, go look at the definition of precedent. Like one time you did that one time, that makes it okay from now on. And what you did was quite the opposite. You come out, you take those plates down off the pole, and you said, we're going to respect everybody equally. And that puts you automatically in the top like 5% of all leaders on the planet, because it was instinct for you at the time to say, no, this is not okay. This is not my version of good. And you fixed it. Yeah.
No, you mentioned one thing about like when the one thing you do, you can set a precedent if you allow one thing, or if you do something personally. Another time I did, it was in a plant and I had walked out on the shop floor and I forgot my safety glasses, and someone came up to me and said, John, you're not supposed to be passed here without safety glasses. I reached in my wallet and I gave him $50. And I said, if anyone ever catches me not wearing my safety equipment, they're going to get $50. And of course, again, that spread through the organization. Everybody heard that story, right? And so, because you know what, you're on stage anyway, so I might as well make it say that, look, and I was thanking that employee for watching out for me personally. They're taking care of my safety. And I thought that was a really good, and again, it was one little thing you can do to send a message, a powerful message, and a rumor that goes, the rumor mill, ex-military, right? The rumor mill you got to use, right? You got to use that rumor mill. I always believe that that's really effective way to communicate. It's better than having a meeting and talking. So it's use the rumor mill, to your advantage. I love it.
Well, and I wonder about the optimism that some of those behaviors of yours, John, created, because first of all, humans are, not necessarily entirely solitary beasts. We live in these tribes, right? And if folks can kind of see a bit of positive, a bit of, again, validation, it's like, maybe this is going to be the new normal. Maybe I'll get noticed, for good things as opposed to just bad things. That's a powerful motivator. And it is a bit of the gossip / undercurrent, right? That no, this is how we're going to treat each other. Fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
John, I'll also say there's a big difference between contributing to the gossip circles and leveraging back channel communications, and you leveraged back channel communications.
No, I think that we miss that as leaders. There's an undercurrent that happens that we don't know anything about, and somehow you got to dig into that and get a message into that undercurrent. And we did it. I mean, on the boat all the time.
Of course,
the rumor mill was faster than anything else on the boat. So I try to tap into that.
I think it still is.
Yeah, really, 100%. So, so people listening to this, leaders listening to this are like saying, oh, great. Now I got to respect everybody and I got to create this good culture and culture is now important. Now it's another thing I got to do on my to-do list. But let's bring it back to when we do create a good comes first culture, what kind of business results can we get when we do this?
Yeah, we've got
three major. That's the best question of all.
It is. We've got three major, what we call our big three, outputs that we know leaders care about. Now, some leaders care more boldly about some than others, but through this process and our work with organizations over the past 20, 25 years, when they follow this process, There's three benefits. The first is a 40% increase in employee engagement. Now, engagement has been a huge problem for all of us humans over the last 30 years formally, and there's been millions of dollars spent on it and programs right and left, and there's been no real tangible movement of that needle. So 40% gains. Now, leaders say, interesting, I'd rather have happy people than unhappy people. Tell me about, I said, hold on. The second benefit is that those engaged folks treat customers way better than they ever have before. Customer service rankings typically grow by 40% or more. Now, both of these are over an 18-month period. This is not a quick announcement and everything's all better. This is a diligent modeling, coaching, reinforcement, redirecting beast. I mean, that's the accountability part of it. But 40% gains in engagement, 40% gains in customer service, results in profits go up 35%.
Mm.
And leaders go, well, I want that first. Well, yeah, I know, but it's not going to happen until you gain some credibility with respectful treatment of employees, and then all kinds of cool stuff happens. What did I miss, Mark?
Well, I'll tell you, just to apply this to today's scenario, what we've seen with our clients, John, is it isn't just the big three. It's relevant stuff that every leader, even if they're not, they think this respect thing's a little kumbaya or a little foo-foo, they're just not going to jump in yet. That's not who I am. I definitely have what we call boomer male syndrome. I've always led this way. I'm not going to change. Well, their HR team is going to them and saying, we're losing people left and right.
Yeah.
And we can't bring in, we're losing the battle for top talent. We're interviewing these people, but we're not securing them. They're not accepting our job offers. They're going to a different kind of culture. And so especially important today, two more metrics. One is retention of key employees. If you're being treated with respect and you're validated every day and you feel like you're part of the solution, not the problem, and you're wholly aligned with the mission, as we talked about earlier. And oh, by the way, big part of this respecting is personal and professional growth. We're going to focus on that, right? Well, if you have all those things, why would you? What kind of company is going to be better than that?
Yeah.
Right. So retention is important, but here's another factor really important in today's world: employee referrals. We've seen employee referrals go like once you're fully engaged in this process, and again, it may take 6, 12, 18, 24 months, maybe longer for some companies that have more work to do than others. But now people actually enjoy being part of this culture. And we're all networking now. We're all on social media. We're going to start going to live conferences again. We're doing Twitter chats again, right? And live stream events. And now we go, you know what? You said you weren't very happy with your company. You should check out my company. And employee referrals, it's like a rocket ship once this culture really takes hold, because people want to invite their friends and their respected colleagues into that community. And they trust the company enough to treat them well. And so, how much money does it save a company if you keep existing talent and actually win the battle for talent? And this, John, employee referrals, 40% more likely to get an interview. Employee referrals, once they get an interview, 40 to 60% more likely to get the job. So it becomes this self-fulfilling circle of like the talent pipeline is always full.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love it. In fact, as a small company owner now myself, I've been running my own business for 6 years, is that we call it the friends and family plan. Like, we prefer to hire people that people know, great. Right? So because we know who that person is, their character, that we bring them in the company. Maybe they don't know our products and but they have the right character for our culture. And so we call it the friends and family plan. Like, awesome. we tried hiring people from the outside, and we're like, he's good. He knows the product, but he doesn't fit within who we are and our family. I mean, our business is a family. We consider it a family. We are very close and tight with each other, and we don't want. It's almost like a new employee has to fit within the family. If they don't fit within the family, it's not going to work out. And we found friends and family idea has worked better for hiring for us, at least.
Boy, that's outstanding. We just talked about kind of the undercurrent of communication, informal, back channels, call it what you will. There's
Right.
a buzz today about your lousy culture. Trust me.
Yeah.
And there's a wonderful buzz when those cultures are purposeful, positive, productive, fun, family, pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, I love that. Yeah. And the other thing you mentioned, customer service, if you look around the country today, customer service is dead. And the reason why customer service is dead is likely that culture of that company is also dead, right? People feel like they're not, the people that are the frontline employees, answering the phone or talking to customers, feel like they're not treated with respect. And so they don't treat their customers with respect. And so I think it's part of the culture that's the problem, and not necessarily customer service. If you get the culture right, then the engagement goes up, and then the customer, the way they interact with customers goes up as well. So those are related. So when we get bad customer service, it could be someone having a bad day, right? But likely it's probably something to do with the culture of that company is broken, and people don't feel respected in their customer facing roles like they should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm reminded of, I think both Mark and I do this probably too often, is when we see somebody that's really happy in their job and they're, to some extent, they're just kind of calm and kind of fun and confident because they got a whole team behind them that's going to do what's needed. We'll go, tell me about your job. You seem actually pleased and comforted, and you guys are having fun. You trust each other. And so there's this, you get this wonderful, subtle, maybe not quite on brand, right? Kind of background that's very, very, very cool. And yet we can go to a different restaurant, different hotel in the same chain and have completely opposite customer experiences. Tell me about your job.
Yeah, it's that frontline manager is so important, right? Doesn't matter what the CEO does. It's the frontline manager that creates the culture of that local team. So that's really, really powerful. Well, it seems like we just got started on this discussion, and this is super important. Leaders who are listening in, this culture is so important. It's so relevant for us to be successful, for our businesses to be successful. So I am going to encourage everyone to go out and find this book. So tell us how can we find out about the book and learn about you guys?
Well, John, we'd encourage everybody to go to goodcomesfirst.com. That'll give everybody some background on the book, the why we wrote the book, on us as authors. But we also hope that it gives everyone a moment to reflect on their current situation. Am I in a culture that I personally thrive in? What influence do I have on that culture? If I'm a leader, how do I fix this culture that's probably not very good, because statistically most cultures really do suck in one form or another. And then of course the book will be available on online on Amazon and all the other outlets. And we're very proud that Penguin and Random House is helping to get the book in people's hands, so you can get it at Barnes and Noble and independent bookstores like Powell's, and in airports at Hudson News and Hudson Booksellers. So look for it as you're walking through the airport, if that's where your job takes you.
That's great. Well, we'll put links to this in the show notes so everybody can find it. And both of you, I really appreciate you being on and sharing this really important topic. And again, I encourage leaders, dive into this topic, understand it, understand your culture. This book comes out, I understand, the 28th. Is that right?
That's right, of September.
28th of September, yes, sir.
Okay, so probably by the time this show is recorded, September 28th, that book is out. So go to your favorite bookstore, find this book. It's called Good Comes First, and this is really an important topic. So thank you both for being on the show.
John, thank you. Appreciate your passion for culture.
And John, thank you for your service then and now.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys. Well, that's it. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.